Thank you, Terry Dinan, for the introduction, and a special thank you for highlighting Wilky's wonderful achievements in the article, "He Was One of Our Own," on the website newcanaanite.com. First, to the members of the Old Timers Club, former New Canaan High School athletes being inducted today, relatives, students, guests, and New Canaanites. It is a privilege for me to be representing my brother Wilky today. I'm sorry I could not be there in person, but currently I'm experiencing sciatica and just at the very beginning of my treatments. When Terry contacted me about accepting this honor, my first reaction was to say that what could I say different from my other acceptance speeches for Wilky's other honors? Then I pondered, and I thought, what would Wilky say? Well, first, Wilky would like to give some acknowledgments, I believe. Wilky would first want to acknowledge and thank his coaches, Coach Lauren Keyes, Coach Joe Sikorsky, and Coach Bill Murphy. Each man had a direct influence on him as an athlete and as a person. He greatly admired all three. Next, Wilky would say how proud he was of his hometown and organizations like the Old Timers Club for recognizing and supporting athletes, as well as the athletic department of New Canaan High School. It is my understanding that this club has finally put a name to that number 12 jersey, and that there is an exhibit dedicated to Wilky in the Hall of Trophies at New Canaan High. Thank you for carrying on his legend. Next, I think Wilky would want to acknowledge the town of New Canaan. Wilky and all of the Gilmores loved New Canaan. The phrase, "it takes a village," reflects the wonderful support and spirit of this town. New Canaan was a place where people relived victories and consoled the defeats for a whole week after the sporting events. There was a feeling of family in town. If you lived in New Canaan, we were all one big family. It was a small, quaint village where everyone knew everyone. Next, Wilky would want to acknowledge and credit his parents for instilling in us the fact that our abilities were limitless. We were taught to and raised to believe that you can achieve anything you put your mind to. Both of our parents were college graduates. My mother started teaching in South Carolina. When she married my father and moved north, they were not hiring African American teachers, so she learned to cook. She opened her own business, Gilmore Caterers. My dad had a business entitled House of Service. It was a home and office cleaning business. They were successful, and they set an example and goals for us. All of us graduated from college and had wonderful careers. Just as an aside, when I graduated June 3rd, 1968, my mother said to me, "Now, when are you going to get your master's degree?" I said, "Mom, I haven't even taken off my cap and gown yet, and you want me to start my next endeavor." She laughed, but I started graduate school in September. Our parents taught us to develop skills which would lead to success. Thus, dare to be great. This was Wilky's motto in his life. He taught and echoed this to everyone he knew, young and old. Wilky was great. Wilky was a great athlete. This is why we're here today. Most of you know his history in New Canaan High School. 3 state championships in 3 years under 3 different coaches. A full scholarship to the University of Colorado, where he was an All-American, a scholar, and graduated with a 4.0 average and a degree in business. Later, he went on to get a law degree from the University of Connecticut Law School. Wilky was one of the few people in California to pass the bar on the first attempt. I could go into much more detail about his statistics and athletic achievements, but that would keep me talking for another 10 to 20 minutes, and I was only given 5 or so. Secondly, Wilky was a great family man. He adored his parents. He was a mama's boy. My mother insisted that my parents buy him a new car before he returned to his sophomore year in Boulder, Colorado. She also kept a scrapbook of the newspaper clippings for every game that he played. Before every game, she would prepare him a steak. My mother's death really rocked Wilky like nothing I'd seen before. Wilky idolized our oldest brother, Elliot Jr. Elliot qualified himself as a mediocre basketball player who only averaged about 12 points a game. Wilky's goal was to be greater than Elliot. Elliot was 5 years older than Wilky, and says that even though he was in college and later the Air Force during the time Wilky played those championship years, he was not able to attend any of Wilky's games, but he fondly remembers an incident when they were younger. He said that my parents had put up a basketball hoop on a tree, and they would shoot hoops outside all the time. So one day they were outside shooting hoops, and Elliot said he just got tired and said, I'm going inside. Well, Wilky continued shooting. Well, it was getting darker and pitch night. And finally, my mother went out there and said, you come in and get your dinner. Elliot says, he was a perfectionist, always trying to improve his skill. He and my sister, Cecilia, are 11 months apart. They did everything together, including Young Life, a non-denominational Christian youth group led by one of the high school teachers. They both sang in the high school choir, the Choraleers, and according to my sister, Wilky would take her to White Plains to do her Christmas shopping. Celia says that she remembers how supportive Wilky was when she got divorced. He admired his nieces and nephews. Wilky would come over to my house, and just any time of the day, sometimes it was his lunchtime, because he wanted to see his nieces and nephews, and he'd say, where are those kids? My niece, Alita Finner, who's Cecilia's oldest daughter, wrote in remembrance of Wilky. Wilky was a dreamer and a visionary, but never left his community or his family behind. He cut our grandmother's house in half and moved it down the Route 123 and then remodeled it, making sure to create comfortable living quarters for our elderly Aunt Bert down